Welcome to the Cross Counsel Podcast. We believe negative emotions shouldn't run your life. We invite you to take a deep dive into this challenging transformational journey that goes far beyond this podcast. Join Executive Director and expert facilitator Steve Freitag and me, John Crevillian, as we discuss how to deeply experience the love and truth of Jesus. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, John Crevillian, and I'm joined with my co-host, Steve Freitag. How are you, Steve?
Oh, I'm just ducky.
Ducky?
Ducky.
Is that good or like?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm going to duck in and out. Oh, my goodness.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It's been an interesting morning, or well, afternoon for us as we've been recording. Just technology is always fun and full of new, strange problems.
That's right. Plenty of opportunities to see what the Lord wants to do in our hearts when things don't go perfectly.
Yeah, true. And, for me, it sounds like job security. So, the more problems that arise, the more I can fix them. And, it's blessed. But regardless of that, how have you been, man? What's new? You guys get a lot of snow up there? We got a lot of snow over the weekend.
What in the world, Wisconsin, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Minnesota got it bad, too.
Worse than us.
Inches. Yeah. But my friends in Minneapolis were like, this is the end of the world because they got 24 inches in 2 days. Man,
good grief.
Wild stuff. But other than technological problems, what's new?
Oh, I think I only missed one in my brackets. So actually I haven't done a bracket in a couple of years, but our daughter was doing that with her RA friends. And so she just said, Dad, what do you think about this or this? And she picked some and I picked some. So
that's cool.
Yeah. Everybody's is broken.
Yeah. True.
Our bracket is kind of like our life, our soul, our brain, our mind. Yeah. You know what? Before any games start, it's all good.
True. Yeah. Wow. We could extrapolate on that for a full episode, but
right. Though I don't know. I don't know if Jesus gives replays when it comes to games. Because that's what he does. He sort of redeems our mind, right? He renews our mind.
That's true.
He sort of gives us do-overs in some of those historical places where we've got those skewed understandings. So.
He gives us those spiritual mulligans.
That's right. I don't think that works in bracketology, though.
No, not in bracketology. We're coming up with all sorts of words today.
Right. Well, that's a word. Yeah, I guess.
Bracketology?
Yeah.
I'll trust you on it.
I'm not as smart as I look.
Well, hey, me neither, and that's saying something. That's
Ouch.
rough, John.
Oh, no.
At least the Lord made me tough.
That's right.
But anyway, I guess just even mentioning mulligans, my thought went immediately to just getting everything ready for the golf outing and stuff, which is coming up. It's going to be sick. Oh man, I'm excited. I've not been to Kestrel Ridge yet.
That's right.
Beautiful. Yeah.
But hey, we're looking for sponsors. We're looking for golfers. We're looking for volunteers. I was just thinking today, this is so amazing. I think the first outing that we did, we didn't make it a big deal. We just kind of pulled some people together. I think we might have had 15 people at our first golf outing.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, I think we had 20 volunteers. So we had more volunteers for our outing last year than we had golfers the first year.
Oh, wow, man, that's wild.
So, and just the best volunteers. Oh my goodness. They're
really funny.
I know you weren't there last year, but I was sort of tearing up as we stood in a circle, kind of get oriented to the day that was going to happen. And I looked and these are all my friends. These people care. These people take a day of work off to be a part of this. So
that's awesome. That's so cool, man.
Yeah. What people sacrifice for the ministry, for what God's doing here. It's awesome.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
And the golf event is a hoot. It's so fun. It's genuinely very cool. Even just from working it, but yeah, we're excited. It's coming up. When is the date, Steve?
June 28th.
All righty. Kestrel Ridge. Be there.
That's right. In Columbus.
You can sign up online.
Yeah. And they've improved the golf course. There's a nicer course here in the area that bought that course. And so if people hear
Oh,
Kestrel Ridge, if they thought of Kestrel Ridge from 5 years ago, it is a different animal. So
okay.
yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, no, Kestrel Ridge is going to be a fun time. The golf event's going to be fun. Always is. We have so many fun things happening right now. So many cool things, like the golf outing, the class, the level 2 is going great right now. Spring 2024 gang is a hoot in and of themselves. So, what do you think about it? How do you feel about it right now?
Oh, I tell you, I think I've said it before, but to and Mary, that is what she is diving into now, is really she is the
Yeah.
one driving the level 2 class. And Carol and
Yes.
I, we try to get to the homework. Sometimes we'll see emails that say, hey, somebody's done their homework. And so when I finally get to it, it's like, oh, Mary got to it already.
Yeah.
So I love that because she wasn't really a part of much of level 1, to see those people uh, just really not just listen to Mary on a podcast,
Hmm.
but now that she's moved toward focusing on in the class and actually helping people in our uh, a little the practicums that we do. I think that
Yep.
we call them peer practices, and
Hmm.
she's heavily involved in that as well. So she is still at it. She's not on the podcast very often anymore, but we'll see if she'll come back as a guest once in a while. But if anybody was wondering, she still loves us. We still love her, and she's
Oh
still a
yeah.
big part of what we do. So wanted to make sure everybody knew that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, she's killing it with the class stuff right now. She loves it. She's super in her element, super focused. So that's great. We also, yeah, like Steve said, we would love to have her on again as a guest. I
Yeah.
think my favorite comment about Mary ever came from like this dude at First Free. I don't think I even knew the guy, but he's like kind of like a big, gruff, like this dude owns minimum one Harley, like probably multiple type of guy. And he comes up and he's like, you're that dude from the Cross podcast, right? And I'm like, yes.
Close enough for
Cross
you.
council, cross council. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever you say it is, sir. And he goes like, you know that Mary, she's really wise. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she totally is. Yeah, yeah, I know. She makes me
Yeah.
think a lot. I was
Yeah.
like,
I
okay,
think the
cool.
one of the comments that stands out is this guy that's in our men's group said, "Where did you get Mary from? Oh my goodness!" Right?
Yeah,
Like, she's a treasure. Like,
she's
tell me about
awesome.
it. Yeah. So,
Yeah, we love you, Mary.
yep, that's enough flattery, right? So,
Yeah, that's enough. She doesn't need it anymore.
she gets that from Wes.
Yeah, exactly,
That's
exactly.
right.
Paul prays in Ephesians 3 that we would be rooted and established in love. Love that surpasses knowledge so that we may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. At Cross Council, it's miraculous to watch people transform by the love and truth of Jesus. But some people need a little extra help. We never turn anyone away because of their inability to cover their session fees. Would you be willing to cover that cost for somebody? Somebody who is looking for freedom from something in their life? We are inviting you to be a part of what Cross Council is doing here. Would you be willing to donate to cover someone? Bless them, though you've never met them. You can do that today at crosscouncil.com.
But yeah, I suppose you want to get started?
Sure.
Rock and roll? Okay, awesome. Well, so today's going to be interesting, I think. I think we got some good stuff going on. Today, we're going to be diving into a pretty massive and pretty heavy topic, trauma, right?
Mhm. Right.
Before we get started, I want to put out there that, for people listening, we're not covering everything on trauma. That would be like 20 episodes. It's a big issue. It's complex, that sort of thing. So in 1 or 2 episodes, or however long we decide to go with this topic, there's probably still going to be more.
Right. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just this massive, intricate phenomenon with like these, I guess, multiple, numerous layers to unravel. And yeah, like you're saying, we're only going to tackle a fraction of it. Really zeroing in on a few things that, especially later. I don't know if we'll even get to it in this podcast, but how some people turn those kind of things into an identity.
Like
So,
trauma itself. Yeah.
right,
The one.
trauma,
Yeah.
or whatever diagnosis they might get. Well,
Right.
I have trauma. I have this. I have that. So,
Mm-hmm.
and really, this ministry was born out of huge trauma. I mean, there's not much worse trauma than a parent who sexually abuses a child.
Mm.
And that's really where this ministry was born out of. It was born out of frustration from Dr. Ed Smith, where these women gathered in a group and they would just meet for weeks or months or years and just sort of talk about the trauma that they had gone through. And even at that time, Ed knew that what they needed was the truth. And if they could just get the truth, boy, it would set them free. That's what scripture says. It must be true. But after weeks and months and years of not seeing as much improvement as what scripture said should happen, he just cried out to God, like, there's got to be a better way. And as he did that, and as the Holy Spirit unfolded some things to him, that's where the melt process or transformational prayer ministry came from, was out of that group of women, and Ed just really digging into some things that he thought would be helpful and what the Lord was nudging him toward.
Mm-hmm.
And so this ministry really, when it comes, it's like God's economy is so much different than man's. And when somebody has suffered that kind of a trauma, and if somebody gives a testimony, people say, oh my goodness, you had that happen. Your dad would beat you, or your brother would molest you, or you were in this horrible situation where you were trapped by these people, all these things that movies are made of.
Mm.
And what's incredible is that in this ministry, when you have these individualized memories, these things where maybe life wasn't horrible in a lot of different aspects, but this thing happened, or this thing happened. And when people are ready and they step into it and they go into these memories and they allow themselves to feel the depth of what's there, and they identify those beliefs that were just instilled. And some of those are obvious things that they would walk away from believing. And some of those memories in one session can have nearly 100% to 100% resolve in these horrible, tragic events, which is unbelievable. It really is the quiet miracles that we talk about. And yet when it comes to every day was like this, every day was like this, whether it was, boy, I was the new kid in school. So every day for 6 months going to school, it was just, who am I going to sit next to at lunch? Or every day, why does mom do what she does? Well, I think she's out, I think she was drinking back then and she would do this. Or why does dad come home and not talk to me? Or why does this happen? Why does my brother, my sister, my friends treat me this way? And it's just this constant drip in their life. Those are some of the things that can take a long time to unpack, because it's just this constant lack of the necessary good things. And that's part of the trauma that we might get into, is the lack of the necessary good things. It's not just the bad things that happen. So, so like you said, John, it's so multifaceted when we talk about trauma.
Yeah.
There's so many things. So, but I really am grateful for the increased awareness of emotional trauma in recent years. Like,
yes,
I don't know if you ever watch old movies, but like World War I movies, or like the impact of men being in war, they would talk about this thing that men would experience. They would just call it shell shocked, which at first, when they made this diagnosis of shell shocked, it really was the shock of the shells, like the vibration and the physical impact. I mean, if there were the men that were injured physically through the bombs that were near them, the shock of the shell, it could tear somebody's leg off. But even if you didn't have much physical damage, the vibration that happened would just throw you. And so that sense of that shell, it just shocked me. And then you might have, your buddy over here that does have something blown off of him. But they started to, after years, realize that this shell shock thing wasn't just because of the physical impact, but that there was a psychological or mental or emotional aspect of it. But that was all it was. It was shell shocked. And it would sometimes get translated to other things too, like a car accident or those kind of physical things that happen. Well, you're just kind of shell shocked, and became just part of the vocabulary, I guess, of the culture. But I think it's probably in the 80s, Bessel van der Kolk, I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, was starting to understand a little bit more. He's kind of from what I understand, he's sort of the the godfather or the grandfather of PTSD. And even in his research from 40 years ago or so, he's continued to understand more and more how intricate we are made, the complexities of who we are. And I don't think he's a believer, but even the idea that the body keeps the score, that's the name of his big book. And it's a big book. So I'll have to wade through there. But so I'm just really grateful that those kind of things aren't overlooked, but as tends to be the pattern, it's like this pendulum swing. It's like we almost can't help ourselves to have the pendulum swing to one side and then way too far in the other side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's crucial to acknowledge and address these experiences, but to also keep in mind that it's human nature for us, right, to take things too far.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, even when it's been a good thing, right?
Even when it was originally a good thing. Exactly. Exactly. We'll get into more specifics in a moment, but so think of this conversation as kind of just like starting, right? Just entering through the front door. We're not barreling in. We're dipping our toes in the water instead of taking the full dive. I know you're going to want to touch on some key points, share some thoughts, and hopefully spark some discussions as we go.
Yeah, and maybe even getting some feedback from our viewers and listeners that we always love, right? And also,
absolutely,
yeah. And just to be clear, we don't want to, we don't consider ourselves experts at all the facets of trauma, right? But we have seen thousands of quiet miracles and very traumatizing memories. And even as we've prepared for this podcast, I've just kind of jumped into this a little bit further, and I have like this new working definition of how I look at trauma. Okay. Or a working definition of how I define emotional trauma. That's probably better said that way.
Awesome. Okay. Let's hear it.
All right. So, well, first I looked up Google's definition of trauma, and I didn't want to limit it to a specific kind of trauma. I didn't want to confuse Google. Right. So
don't do that.
So let me see where it is here. It says, I came up with this. It's a deeply distressing and disturbing experience that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope, often leading to lasting emotional or psychological effects.
Okay. So the emphasis would be like on overwhelming experience then.
Right. Well, that's what it seems to be, right? I mean, again, that's just a general thing that I plugged into Google, but it does seem to just consider just the overwhelming experiences. And there's no doubt about it. There are overwhelming experiences. We talk about truth-based pain. We talk about the reality of what things are, right? So there's no questioning that. But this simple definition doesn't take into account any way to measure the experience or how the person may already be predisposed to a reaction that's like over the top. Right. What we say is there can be on a scale of 0 to 10, there can be a 3 that happens, a bad thing that's 3, but our reaction is a 10.
Sure. So that's like kind of the difference between like the actual thing and then the perception, the reaction, and general belief system.
Yeah. It just comes back to what we do, right? Our belief system. That's that which needs to be renewed. So, yeah. And we're not talking about somebody's theology or their politics or their general philosophy of how they view the world, because that's not nearly as important as their heart's operating system. And when I mean that, I mean just the things that are just kind of just cured into their brain that only Jesus can adjust. So the heart system, the heart operating system, and it's hard to distinguish like our mind, our heart, that kind of thing. But, we talk about heart beliefs a lot. There's the logic, the left brain stuff, and then there's the right brain stuff, our experience. So that's when I say the heart operating system, I'm talking about that deeply embedded emotional, experiential right side of the brain thinking stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. I've seen a bunch of different people handle the same situation a bunch of different ways, boy, the only examples I can think of are politics, and I'm not going to bring them up because then I'll never stop. But, people react to the same reaction with different levels of intensity. They're translating it differently. Their belief systems are different, etc. And even for less, polarizing topics, but just in general situations that people go through every day. You've called it our mind's programming. And that we need Jesus to reprogram us in alignment with his reality and what he wants us to take away from it.
Amen, man. Yeah,
man.
Totally. So here we go. And again, I can't stress enough that this is a working definition, but this is what I have so far. Emotional trauma. Okay. So I've put it in those terms, emotional trauma, which is where we more live. There's a difference between, getting hit by a baseball bat, which I've had that experience in the back of the head, but that's maybe a different story for another time, but it's up to you. If you're curious, I can go into that.
I mean,
but
you can't just leave
drop
that like that, but sure.
Oh no. Yeah. So we'll leave the definition for a second, but yeah, you talk about shell shock. I was at I came back for a Christmas party. I worked at let's just say a local restaurant.
Okay.
And at the Christmas party, hey, there's no better idea than to give cooks and food servers free drinks, and then to have and then to have a piñata that's going to
no.
So yes, there's actually one of the food servers that I had actually left, but they invited me back and Jenny back because they love Jenny, and
of course
I remember where they're like, okay, let's clear the floor, let's get the piñata out, and I turned my back and they'd already handed a baseball bat to this woman, and with a blindfold on, she cracked me in the back of the head full force.
Oh no.
So I was immediately put into a Bugs Bunny cartoon, and I mean that literally. Because I heard bells. It was this ringing in my head.
Oh.
And,
yeah. Holy cow, man.
I was probably about 25 years old, and 25-year-olds don't cry, right? Guys don't cry, right?
No.
So I just honestly calmly walked to the restroom, and with even the ringing was still going on, I just looked in the mirror, and I will admit that a few tears came out. That was pretty horrible. Sure. And then my best buddy at that time who worked at the restaurant came in, and I just was like, that wasn't good. So anyway,
oh my gosh.
So there is physical trauma, but
yes.
All right. So now that people have fast forwarded ahead to get to this, right?
Thank you for indulging me. Yeah.
This was all for John's curiosity, because there's no way you'd be so distracted without me filling that in. But okay. And that gave people time to, grab their pens and paper. So
exactly.
Emotional trauma occurs when you interpret an event in a way that leads you to perceive a diminished sense of your own value, worth, connection, and or dignity.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right on. That really hones in on the subjective nature of emotional trauma then, emphasizing on our interpretations of events and how those can profoundly impact our sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I gotcha.
You're processing.
Slowly out loud. But yeah, it's like we've covered. It's about how you internalize those things and how you perceive those experiences. And this is kind of an offshoot, but I forget which philosopher said it, but roughly translated, it was something along the lines of the action or the scenario is not evil itself, but in thinking it becomes good or evil, which is like a really kind of loose translation way of saying the same thing of like, okay, your perception is really what matters. It's what sticks here, that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah. Say that one more time.
Okay. So emotional trauma occurs when you interpret an event in a way that leads you to perceive a diminished sense of your own value, worth, connection, and or dignity. So we're going to stop it right here. I hope it's a decent point for you to, as a listener, to just stop and wait for next week. But we just thought that with the time that we had to record, that we needed to just put a pin in it right now. And I hope it makes sense when you come back to the next podcast. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate it.
This has been the Cross Council Podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, share with your friends, and look for us on social media. The world will become a much better place, and Jesus will be seen in a much better light the more we are transformed by His truth and love. We'll see you next time, everybody.